So the first thing you're going to notice is it was pretty wavy. It was not looking very good. I had suspected spark plugs, but as we get to right about 6,300, all of a sudden the power tanks, it gets really erratic. It's not making power at all. I wasn't really sure what was going on. So definitely had to start staring at the data a lot closer, try to come up with a good solution. Because of all the knock videos, you're going to see that I had made one change since the last time it had been on the dyno though. So let's go to that right now. So here is what was causing it to power out. As you can see, it was 13 pounds right at this particular point. It had 10 degrees in the base map. The lambda trim head started to come into effect because of the knock control. But on cylinder number 4, it was pulling 7 degrees. You can see the raw knock value is 0.318. The spikes are huge. And so what had changed is I wanted to make sure that I was tuning it on its primary frequency, which is basically 6700. I did have the integrator time slowed down just a little bit. So remember, that's its sampling rate, how many times it's looking, or what the space between USEC is. So sampling time. Let's say sampling time. So it really wasn't very happy, and I wasn't sure why. So what I did is standard practice for how we approach problems. We can see where it was tapering off. I decided that it was probably a good idea to go ahead and pull the plugs, turn the knock control off, see what I could get it to do, and then all of a sudden it started behaving. We can see down here everything started getting better. The boost wasn't going crazy because it wasn't pulling a bunch of timing. It was still rich. I actually also had problems with the lambda feedback failing at one point, and that was dumping way more fuel because it thought it was lean. So there was kind of a comedy of errors going on, all things to check. And so with that being noted, let's go to the Infinity software here real quick. And we're going to go to Lambda. And I wasn't logging it at the time on this run, but TJ, our engine builder, pointed out that there were features you can log to see if you have a bad wideband sensor. So if the feedback is active, you're going to see a 1. If it's disabled, you're going to see a 1. And obviously, if one of these is a 1, the other is going to be a 0. It will give you some error information. It will tell you what the heater duty cycle is, if that's working. So you can add channels to a layout, and you can kind of get a better idea. You can see where the knock control came in. It dumps fuel. It just was being really antisocial. So, and on that note, I was starting off rich. I was starting off on 11.1 air fuel. Like I wasn't going to run this thing lean because they are high compression. So it was mostly pump gas at the time. We did put some 110 in it to help alleviate any potential concerns about knock. But now let's fast forward to the next day, or the next time it was on the dyno. Actually, we can kind of look at some of what happened later that afternoon. So we have the green line. I'm going to close all of these real fast. So basically the last pull, I got the air fuel manually dialed. I turned the feedback off. I wasn't really doing a whole lot to clean it up yet, but we can see 360, 237. Wastegate line was 12.6. I was pretty much on the money for my target right here. It did creep a little bit because the ignition timing was low, which we've talked about. We're going to get a little bit of creep in most turbos on wastegate line anyway, especially if they're volumetrically efficient. But this is where we had left off. So we came back at it a couple days later. I think 2, in fact. So exactly 2 days later. And let's switch to those dyno runs, and then we're going to switch to the data as well. Actually, I can see something's going on here. I don't have the manual scaling values on. Let's turn those on so this looks right. That will help us moving forward. There we go. Of course, it's going to make more than that, so we're going to up the numbers a little bit. If you've never used WinPep software, it's very, very intuitive. I should do a whole episode on that, I guess. But anyway, there. That looks more like a normal dyno sheet. Crossing at 5252 now. So let's go to a couple days later where I was just starting to ease into the tune, and we're going to go back to the knock settings and kind of what I found I had to do there. So we'll start with the knock settings first. This particular car definitely required doubling the frequency on the sensor. As far as I know, it is a stock knock sensor. I do not know its overall condition. It is definitely going to be something that we want to upgrade to maybe a Bosch flat response, something a little more robust than the factory Honda one. But it did allow me to get a really good idea of what was going on as far as actual cylinder noise and a strategy that I could use to make sure this car was going to be safe. So you can see the filter frequency is 13.14, which is basically second order. I did make the sampling time 260 USEC, so it's a lot faster than I would normally run. And when we look at the data, that number 4, it's still being pesky. It's generating some spikes, especially compared to everything around it. Even cylinder 2 is a little noisy. Now when we go to ignition trims, right now it's all zeroed out. We're going to move forward and I will show you what I ended up having to do to get it to work. Here's the dyno sheet real quick for this particular pass. You can see it's really smooth. I was starting to think that I was having phantom knock, especially with the fuel in it. Air fuel is definitely dialed. The feedback was working. Everything was a little bit more in line with where it should be. So now let's fast forward to more or less the finished product to wrap this up, get some ideas of where we ended up for numbers, and what the results were as far as the knock control and power. If that content is something that you like, please consider giving me a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed already, please consider doing so. Definitely leave comments for positive, negative. Let me know where I can improve, what you guys want to see in the future. It just helps the channel and it helps get you the content that you want. If possibly you have a friend or a community group that can benefit from content like this, please consider sharing it with them. Facebook, Instagram, wherever you want to go. Lastly, if you want notified as new content is added, simply click on the bell icon and YouTube will do that for you. Thanks again, guys. Take care.